All right, let's get this show on the road. Welcome to Torn Tuesday. Hello, Clifford Scott Broadway.
Well, hello there, Justin Sewell. How the heck are you? It's a pleasure to be here on Torn Tuesday with everyone, the one-stop weekly destination for all J.R.R. Tolkien news, information, analysis, and a little bit of rumor and mischief. We'll see what we can get this week. We've got lots of wheels to cover, lots of material, and we have a special guest visiting all the way from Boston. We have a picnic, we had a birthday celebration for the world's most famous fictional characters, Bilbo and Frodo. We got lots of news, the WGA strike coming to, tentatively, an end. Oh my gosh, all good things, even all bad things, must come to an end. Boy, do we got news. But it's a pleasure to introduce ourselves. That guy over there is Justin. He's our producer, co-host. And me, I'm Clifford Broadway, co-writer and producer of the Ringers Lord of the Fans documentary. And sometimes man about town, writing stuff every here and there. But that's for the OneRing.net. And we've been around for 20-odd years, the biggest web portal in the world for fans of J.R.R. Tolkien. Welcome to the Discord, people, the YouTube, the Facebook, the Twitch, Twitter, and Tweedledee Tweedledums. Everybody out there, welcome to our wonderful worldwide chat. Oh my goodness, the news. Justin, we just can't even start the show without really significant headlines. And I'd like for you to say what you said a while ago, that this strike was going to go on through the end of the year. Did you not, at one point, predict that
That's right. Well, we wanted to give an update to everybody and what's actually going on. So this is the official WGA, the Writers Guild of America. Those are writers working in American productions, American-based productions. And of course, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, is an American production produced by Amazon Studios right here in Culver City, Los Angeles, California. Lord of the Rings is and always has been a studio property. But you notice Peter Jackson has his own little production company that actually produced Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I believe it was called 3 Foot 6. That is the company that does all the hiring for the actual production, the stuff you see on screen. And that is a New Zealand company. It's not a U.S. company. So that's why The Hobbit, infamously, was a non-union production. So was Lord of the Rings, non-union production. New Zealand was a non-union country. It's one of the reasons that we believe Amazon went to New Zealand for season 1, because New Zealand was historically a non-union country. So it is a big deal that the one union, one of the strongest unions that were involved in this production, and all the scripts were written right here in Los Angeles for season 1 and season 2, is the Writers Guild of America. This is the big one when it comes to Lord of the Rings. This is the big deal. But the strike isn't over. Just want to be clear. Here's a tweet from Jeff Yang, who says, underscoring how WGA negotiators told the studios the union will not be going back to work. Let me say that again. The union will not be going back to work until the Screen Actors Guild also has a deal.
That's right. It continues apace. We cannot overlook that this is a symbiotic relationship that is now bound, not just professionally and creatively, but in union terms, in terms of organized labor. This is actually becoming a national moment. Look at what's happening with the United Federation of Auto Workers.
Well, we're not here to talk about auto workers. We're here to talk about the unions here in Hollywood that have to do with Lord of the Rings. And there's
what about the visual effects? What about the visual effects artists that work on Lord of the Rings? What about the other unions, like the visual? I'm going to keep talking over you until I finish my thought. Okay, this is how we're going to play the show tonight. Okay, we're not here to talk about those other things, but we're definitely going to talk about the other unions that are starting to bring attention to the labor movement. This isn't. What do you think the Marvel and animators at Disney and the visual effects people are all getting in line to strike for. Not to mention the culinary workers in Las Vegas. They're going to shut down the entire tourism industry in Vegas. This is starting to become a much bigger flavor.
A little bit excessive
because that is not a bit excessive.
The hotel
are you watching the trends?
Have been on strike
Look at
here
the trends.
in Los Angeles all summer.
Seriously.
Has not
Seriously.
stopped tourism at all. In fact, you
I'm
have tourists
excited
right
by
now
the solidarity
here because the strike is not working for the tourism industry. So
no, but the solidarity between unions is the underscoring point that I'm just trying to let everybody latch onto and hold on to that. Hold on to that for a moment. That is why the Writers Guild is tentative.
Let me ask you this,
and
Cliff.
we're waiting for the Screen Actors Guild
Tolkien
to get their deal.
Support union work? Was Tolkien a union guy?
How would I know? I do not have any awareness of anything that Professor Tolkien had said, even in his letters. And I might have to ask myself or some other helpful fans in the community to do some granular research. But I honestly do not remember a single comment from him
in context,
about unions.
In context is SAG and Writers Guild are in lockstep until everybody has a deal.
Yes.
And there's season 2 Rings of Power writer Helen Shang with Pedro Pascal himself today. This is today after the writers got their tentative deal going. So a couple other notes on the writers. We just talked about that. The writers will not be going back to work until SAG has a deal. Another person, Linda Holmes, says, it turns out if the reporting is accurate, that 2 of the final sticking points were AI and room size. And the WGA held out on structural and long-term stuff rather than just accepting pay increases. This is, and she says, that seems like a really interesting labor moment. And to Cliff's point, the labor moment that we're going through right now is the Writers Guild that have been striking all summer have held out for room size and AI. And Cliff, we have reported on this show that those 2 sticking points, the hardest negotiated points of this whole thing, affected Rings of Power.
It did. Many of the exact things that the writers experienced on the Rings of Power are what they are striking about.
So in that tweet, they say the writers held out for AI and room size. Cliff, remind people, how did room size affect Rings of Power season 1 and 2?
There's a distinction between using a fully staffed room or what they call a mini room. If you can accept this nomenclature, and don't go too far into your imagination, but just stay in this lane with me, please, that instead of a full group of people, fully staffed, with the showrunners, the top writers, the middle-level writers, and then the entry-level writers, and then all the interns and staff, which is like 5 levels of hierarchy. And they didn't have that. They had a mini room with a few people, restricted by COVID, and they weren't allowed to even help out and be where they needed to be on time.
They weren't allowed on set.
On the set. They weren't allowed on the set. Where they would make daily changes and work daily with what the actors are struggling with and what the scene requires and what changes in the course of day-to-day production.
They had to recast Celebrimbor.
Oh dear! Not only that,
and the writers were not there on set because the mini room had shortened the writing schedule. Also, the mini room prevents future seasons from including the brain trust that is the earlier seasons. The whole point of a fully staffed room is you have junior writers doing junior tasks like dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and making sure scripts are legible and readable. So when the big writers get promoted, maybe they get their own show, maybe they have to make a transition to somewhere else, there's a junior writer ready to step up in their place that know all the warts, know all the lore, know why certain decisions were made early on in the writer's room. So by the time you get to season 3 and 4, you have this stacked bench of junior writers into senior writers into staff writers.
And they, believe it or not, they have evolved throughout the show itself. These people who work in these larger staffed rooms, they also evolve. Some of them, like in the case with the most famous case, would be Brian Cogman, right? And how he started at a different level in the writer's
He
room
started
and then
as a
moved up
junior guy. He wasn't even a
and
writer.
progressed. It
He
was an
was
evolutionary process for him as it was for the show.
Brian
Yes.
Cogman was just in charge of keeping track of the lore. That's it.
Yeah.
And then at some
Yeah.
point, they offered him assistant writing on an episode. And then
Yep.
by season 2 or 3, he was writing a full episode. By season 4, he's directing episodes. And and then on Rings of Power, Amazon hired him specifically to write the show Bible for Rings of Power. How do you make a prestige tentpole fantasy TV on the level of Game of Thrones? Brian Cogman was arguably one of the best, most qualified people in the world to do that work, to get this Lord of the Rings show started. And what happened? They shortchanged the writer's room, and Brian walked.
That's what happened. Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying they short-staffed the writer's room. They shortchanged the budget of the writers, and suddenly Brian Cogman did not want to be involved in the show anymore.
I see. Well, there could be a causality there, maybe. Interesting speculation, but it's useful to remind our audience, I think.
XOXO says it's funny because Cogman and company didn't follow the lore of Game of Thrones. Well, first off, the last 2 seasons, didn't have any lore. But Brian Cogman is well considered the best of all the showrunners and the writers of Game of Thrones. Brian Cogman has the best reputation for staying true to the themes of the books of Game of Thrones, even if it did go off the rails. And the best episodes in the final season were written or directed by Brian Cogman. So you want to talk about a guy that knows how to play in the sandbox, make a bunch of changes that aren't accurate to the lore, but still create an engaging, fun show that everybody wants to watch. That's Brian Cogman. And and Rings of Power Season 1 can really feel his absence. It's boring.
Let's go back to the idea that Rings of Power had a smaller staff of writers, what is called a mini room. And I really like what you said, Justin, because a large room, a fully staffed writers setup, is going to become a brain trust. That was the right term to use because it is about a development. It's a developmental and progressive ongoing process to create five seasons. In this case, Rings of Power, 5 seasons. In the case of Game of Thrones, I believe that was 8. But over all those years, over all that time, there is an evolution, a growth in the understanding of that world, the internal logic of that world, and how the writers on the show understand it and how to work with it better. And the show is the beneficiary. As long as they keep that brain trust that I think that's a very adroit way of describing it. If they keep that brain trust instead of just a mini room of poor understaffed people who can't even be on set, who can't, get it all, having a much bigger structure of writers is only going to benefit the show years and years down the line. One would hope.
That's right. Well, so what's next steps? All right. So they have a tentative agreement. The writers have won a lot of concessions from the studios regarding minimum writers' room, fully staffed, based on budget and size and proposed audience. They want AI. They want a bunch of other stuff. So what happens is they're going to formalize the tentative agreement, which is probably 2 or 3 pages. They're going to formalize it into a long-form contract, which is maybe 50 pages. I don't know. And then that's going to take a couple weeks. I'd say 2 to 5 weeks. And then the Writers Guild will put the vote to all of the members of the guild. And it has to be voted in support, I believe, by a majority or a 2/3 majority. I'm not quite sure their union rules. So that will take 2 to 5 weeks, I expect. If there are no changes if the Writers Guild itself and the members don't require any changes from the draft, then it's a done deal. They sign deals. So we're looking at least another month of getting the contract in place.
Okay, wow. All right. And in that time, we wonder what will happen with the actors, the Screen Actors Guild still continuing their strike.
And as we just showed, the Writers Guild have told all the studios that are not going back to work. They're not going to start writing until the Screen Actors Guild has a deal. The studios have not restarted talks with SAG. It's still a strike as far as the actors are concerned. And right now, the next guy up is our man Samwise Gamgee. Sean Astin is on the negotiating committee for the Screen Actors Guild, following in his family's legacy. Both his mother and father were senior members and of leadership of SAG in decades past. So Samwise himself is stepping up. He is up to the plate. The next move is Sam's. It is literally Sean Astin.
It is. You're right. The next move is actually Samwise the Strong. So, and I hope that these actors realize they couldn't be in better hands.
All right, so I'm looking at the calendar. So if we're in the final week of September, I don't expect the writer's contract to get ratified until the end of October. And then I expect hopefully negotiations start with actors by then. But as Cliff, you may know that Hollywood disappears in November, December. Everybody here in this town is a transplant. A lot of people travel. They go back for family for the holidays, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. Productions stop. So basically, this town shuts down in November, December. So since negotiations have not restarted with SAG, and they're going to take probably a month to ratify the WGA contract, our original reporting here, our whispers on the ground, again, Sean is a friend of the site, we're still on a clock that looks like January at the earliest for a SAG deal. So this strike is still holding to what I've been saying for the last 3 or 4 months, which is this strike is going to go through the end of the year. Even though the writers have a tentative agreement, they've agreed to stay striking until SAG gets its deal, and that SAG deal probably won't be done until January. So that's the expectation on the ground as of today.
Wow. Well, then that means that our reporting about what's changing with Rings of Power is still going to be consistent. Nothing will significantly change until season 3, right?
Right.
In terms of the strike,
we'll get into that a bit, but right now season 2 doesn't change. Season 2 is actually in a better position now with the writer's strike over. It's not over yet. They have to ratify the contract. Yes,
they do.
What people have been told is writers can now start promoting their shows. So we've seen a lot of more activity with potentially people involved with the show on our Discord this week. At like the day after the strike was called off, our Discord became very active on season 2 stuff. So it's very interesting. But the writers now start talking about season 1 and season 2 of Rings of Power. They are still not going to work. That's different than a strike. But they will not go to work. Writers will not go to work until actors have a deal. But they are not striking.
I think that's excellent that they're still supporting the actors.
Is just a voluntary motion. It's not her presence with Pedro Pascal on the picket line today. It was a personal choice, not a union choice. So it just means that the writers and showrunners can now keep talking about promoting their shows and movies that they love to work on. So they can promote all they want, and it's going to take a couple more weeks for the contract to get ratified, but work does not start until later on. And
I get it.
So that's what's going on. And one more side note, Cliff, According to this tweet from Mark Harris in New York City, as a side note to the strike negotiations, I find it interesting that Apple and Amazon are not in the room. Cliff,
That was a very strange bit of news.
why?
Actually, that was a very strange bit of news. That
So,
Apple and Amazon's not in the room. And you know what? It makes you wonder how union busting their attitude really is. You know? It really makes me wonder how union busting their general corporate attitude is.
well, Cliff, let's play this out. What if Amazon refuses to sign on the union line? That means everybody involved with the show are fired. The showrunners, all writers, it's a clean house, clean sweep. If Amazon refuses to sign the negotiated union deal.
Whoa, really? Are you suggesting?
Then all those union writers and showrunners, they're gone. Because those people, the showrunners, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, and all of the writers, Jennifer Hutchison, Justin Doble, Helen Shank, they're all WGA members. All of them.
That's true. That's true.
If Amazon, who is not at the negotiating table this weekend, who has not agreed to any union deal, still may not sign the union contract, if they don't sign, total reset on the leadership of this show. Your thoughts, Cliff?
That's seismic possibility. I was going to say news, but it's not news yet. This is a hypothetical, all right? But whoa, what a huge explosion.
Amazon was not in the negotiation room.
But why wouldn't they be in the negotiating room is the thing I really want to nuance with you right now. I mean, my thoughts are that it could not be more damaging to the profile of the project in an industry level, much less on a fan level. And there's two different perceptions going on there. The way that people within the industry regard Prime Video as a future employer. How do people in the industry regard them as a potential partner you want to work with? Is that a studio that you want to take your script to? Are those people you potentially want to work with when they're behaving this way? Right? There's one level of industry inside the way it's projected on them and the way this looks like really bad, awful optics. Really awful optics for them.
I'm just preparing you for. We're reading the tea leaves right here.
But
Amazon is not in the room. Amazon is guilty of the most egregious issues that caused the strike in the first place.
Yes, I know. Yes, indeed, that's true.
So Amazon is the most guilty, and maybe Rings of Power might be the most guiltiest of all shows on television right now. Most guiltiest of all of the issues why the writers were striking.
Maybe so. Yes.
And the fact that Amazon was not in the room to negotiate this new deal, which hopefully will be ratified, will Amazon agree to the terms? Is the question now.
Okay, that is well.
But
if you say
I just want to put it out there to prepare yourselves because Amazon is such a hardball player. Remember how hardball they played New Zealand? That they walked away and told New Zealand to keep their tax break.
I certainly do.
Amazon don't play, right? Amazon plays their own game, and so it is not out of line to start thinking about what happens if Amazon just refuses to sign a union trade agreement with WGA, which means the showrunners and writers are all fired.
Well, the optics from a fan level, just as much as from an internal industry level, the fan optics are that they're a studio who doesn't have their shit together. From our point of view, it looks like
their own stuff together. Come on.
But if they've got their own stuff together, then that they're not playing on the same table of equality, fairness, fair pay, fair compensation, appropriate working conditions. If they're not on the table to sign this agreement with the union,
you guys are getting a heart attack. I'm sorry to give you a heart attack. But
no, it's just the optics are so bad.
We have to tell you
what's going on, even for Apple TV,
and how all of this could affect Lord of the Rings. Because if something crazy happens, you want to be prepared so not everybody's caught off guard. So I just want to prepare for that. And also remember, Actors Equity is the UK union that is involved in Rings of Power, not Screen Actors Guild. Rings of Power is not a Screen Actors Guild. So as of this deal, if the new deal is ratified by the union, Rings of Power has no more union problems because SAG does not affect Rings of Power.
I actually think that well, I appreciate that. I think that the optics are really crappy for Apple TV and Prime Video or anybody else who is not on board with this agreement, because we have a very clear understanding in layman's terms. All of us regular fans out here, we're just living our lives, doing our jobs, and we want to read and enjoy and watch Tolkien and enjoy the wonderful world of Middle-earth. And for us to get a sense from far away, if you smell fire, you smell some smoke, I mean, that's the phrase. If you're smelling smoke, then something's on fire. And Prime Video not being on board with fair worker agreement and fair treatment of writers is just such a bad optic. But if it turns out that hypothetically they do sign the agreement and everyone's in agreement and on board, then that very dramatic thing you're talking about will not happen. Like
and we don't know the terms of this new deal. Again, the terms
not
have
all
not
of them.
been
Not
publicized. We don't know if because there have been some rumors here in LA that the AMPTP, the American Motion Picture and Television Producers, may dissolve and form a new union because there's this idea of content and television and film and content, but it's not content, it's film. And where does Rings of Power fit into this? Where does Amazon fit into this? And maybe the AMPTP is too old of a organization to make a deal that is good for everybody. So we don't know what the deal terms are. This may be a WGA contract that is voluntarily accepted by each studio.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know.
Hold on. Let's add on that these terms were agreed to weeks and weeks ago by A24, which is an independent studio, which has now become something of a mini major. They're a mini major now.
Taylor Swift agreed to it. Of course, she just made $2 billion off of her last tour.
Well, yes, she did. But how about that?
By the way, I love the fact that NFL's Twitter account changed their name to NFL Taylor's version.
That's funny. They've nice. really aggravated a lot of the right people by doing that. It's very funny to watch. It's really funny to watch.
And to respond to the chat room, the writers are happy, but happiness only gets you so far. This show, Rings of Power, only improves with better support for writers.
That's what I'm saying.
Every other department is on point. The casting, the acting, the producing, the visual effects, the prosthetics, the
production design,
the production
art
design,
department,
the music, everything is so on point. But because the writers were not given full support and changes happened during production,
and some of that was COVID too. Now, what if they had just had a mini room and there was no COVID at all in that circumstance? Do you think that season 1 would have maybe fared a little bit better? A little bit, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe, no? Yeah. No, well, the thing is, I know that we're not going to see strong differences until season 3, because, as you said, as you helped us report as accurately as we could report a long time ago, that the season 2 scripts were written a very long time ago, and that they're all done. They all wrapped them up, finished them, and they pressed print on the printer.
Part 2, as far as anyone's concerned.
Getting to that. Yes, yes, sir. I wanted to bring that back into the conversation. Yes, exactly what you said last week.
Well, we've got a lot of other news to moving on. Outstanding main title. You may remember Rings of Power is nominated for the outstanding main title in the Emmy Awards this year. And they are up against Andor, Cabinet of Curiosities from Guillermo del Toro,
Well,
Ms.
that was a great
Marvel,
opening title. That was great.
and Wednesday. So, Cliff, I want to
Really?
get your opinion. I loved
Oh,
Cabinet of Curiosities intro. I loved
mm-hmm.
Wednesday's intro and its
Yes.
nod to
Yes.
the earlier work of Tim Burton, who directed the first 3 or 4 episodes of Wednesday. So it is a Tim
Yeah.
Burton show. But we got to go with our boy Howard Shore, correct?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah, I would go with Howard Shore. But there's a lot to be said about all these nominees. These are really strong visuals and graphics. And if you're a fan of classic, cinema, you can go back to Saul Bass and his animated titles for all those Hitchcock films. They're always moving and dynamic with changes in graphic design or color that emphasize a striking change in mood or an emphasis on a certain person's name
That's
or a
Cabinet of
thematic idea.
Curiosities.
Heck yeah. No, no, I'm just saying Saul Bass did all this great stuff
It's
for
not
Hitchcock.
nominated. Let's stay on topic. I don't
But
remember
hey,
Andor's
we are staying,
title.
if I may, we are incredibly on topic because there's a rich, abundant history of opening titles that deserve their own award. I mean, some people are like, why is this even a
So how
category?
does okay? That's why there's a
it's a
category called main
yeah,
title.
yeah, because it's a unique work of art in its own. To be able
Yes.
to, it's a different production team, it's different people from the regular folks on the set of Rings of Power, different artists, a very different creative approach can be had
So
working with a
what are
team
you
of title
hearing?
builders.
So what
And
are
there's
you
a
hearing
strong
in
set.
town?
What I'm hearing in town, honestly, Cabinet of Curiosities and um and Rings of Power are talked about all the time. I talk to animators and editors, people who work in post production, and they're like, "Wow, that was really really cool stuff." The Ms. Marvel opening credits are also vibrant, colorful, with some of the best needle drops and great song choices you can imagine. And they modified and changed bit by bit in different episodes. But you look at Rings of Power, and it's just so classic and kind of austere. It's got a different mood, different vibe. But the Andor opening is also really simplistic. I don't think Andor will win. It's just a very
I
simple,
don't
straight.
either.
It's a crossfade. But I got to tell you the truth. Rings of Power is up in this category um, with what's the other one that you just said?
Wednesday in
Um,
Cabinet of Curiosities.
and Cabinet of Curiosities is the strongest competition. And wouldn't that be ironic that Guillermo del Toro would end up being competition for Lord of the Rings
Well,
in a different category?
we
That
know
would be
that the
ironic.
award shows are very political. Do you think there's an appetite to give Howard Shore an Emmy award just because he's Howard Shore?
Heck yeah. Oh, hell yeah. There's a lot of gravity with his name. You know, that is going to sway a lot of voters instantly. They might have different opinions about the show itself, but they know that it's a separate design team that worked on the opening title. And our fondness for Mr. Howard Shore cannot be underestimated. That's for sure.
All right, and this puts him one step closer to the EGOT. He already has a
Oh,
Grammy
please,
Award for Lord of the Rings. He has an Oscar for
please.
Lord of the
Yes.
Rings, and
The
this would give him
Oscar,
an Emmy for Lord of the Rings.
the Emmy, and then the Grammy. If he gets this Emmy, that'd be great. Let's remind the audience, when is the upcoming Emmy Awards presented? When does that
Well,
happen?
here's the schedule. Because of all the strikes, everything got delayed.
Yeah,
So you
right,
can see right there,
right.
August 28th, which just went by a month ago. Final round voting ends. So the votes are in. No more votes can be counted. They're recounting now as we speak, but no more votes, no
Hmm.
mail-in votes. In fact, they were all mail-in votes. So the votes are
Right,
in. There's
right.
a engineering, science, and tech awards in a couple weeks, October 18th. But the creative arts Emmys that are not on television, in which Howard Shore would be involved with, is January 6th. Weird date for all of us Americans. So let's just stick
That's
with Sunday, January 7th. January 7th is when we
that's a ways
expect.
off.
Uh,
That
yes.
is quite a ways off. In January? It's a ways off.
They pushed the date of the Emmy Awards from October to January because of the strikes. No one knew when it was going to end. So is it possible? I don't think it's possible that they move up the Emmy Awards any earlier because, again, SAG needs to get their deal done.
You're right. I would also expect, all right, with your prognostication now in place, let's just say that in solidarity with Screen Actors Guild, with that solidarity continuing through the end of the year, sounds about right. We're looking at January for the Emmys. And hello, Otaku Senpai in the chat. I agree that the Sandman opening title credit deserved a nod. It did deserve a nod. Yeah, definitely.
It did.
The opening credit was great for that show.
Well, I do think it's Cabinet of Curiosities versus Rings of Power, and I do hope.
I do too.
I do hope Howard Shore has the political sway to bring it home, and I hope Amazon fully supported that endeavor, and I hope people voted.
I hope so too. Can I acknowledge our great friends in the Tolkien community? Caitlin, our friend T with Tolkien, is here, and also our friend Matt, Nerd of the Rings, is here, among many other luminaries and exciting personalities and fans that we have here in the world of Tolkien fandom. And I actually have Jean Bourgeois sitting here in the living room, one of our big Tolkien fans, who's been a faithful audience member for many years.
And speaking of Nerd of the Rings, Cliff, everybody here. He posted about this new History of Middle Earth box set that was just announced today.
Oh, I'm so excited about that. Those are not trade paperbacks, are they? Are those actual hardcovers?
Those are hardcovers of
the count me in.
4 books. It includes the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, the Book of Lost Tales Part 1, and the Book of Lost Tales Part 2. Now, why are there two different sets here?
Well, because there's so many volumes, it is a lot easier, for a retail price point, for them to be separated. This new edition features some outstanding illustrations and new dust jackets. I've got the original first editions hardcover. Let me see it. Let me see. I'll show you. And they're boring and bland and have no pictures. And they're not boring and bland. The words are rich and wonderful. I'm just saying there's no cover illustration. Sounds boring
to me if there's no pictures.
Oh my gosh. It's Tolkien. Use your imagination and let your imagination take you there. Hold on. I'll show you what I've got.
While Cliff gets that, let me explain the two differences here. The one on the left is a fully illustrated version featuring artwork by Alan Lee and John Howe, but I believe it's just Alan Lee. So it's a fully illustrated covers and illustrations in the books. The one on the right, which I believe is the same price point, is the classic editions of. It's basically a reprint of the History of Middle Earth, as Cliff is bringing from his shelf right now. Cliff just told you his versions of the book do not have any illustrations. Well, that is the box set on the right there. With the colored spines and no artwork. Those are what Cliff has. It's a reprint of Cliff's version. Cecilia wants to remind everybody in the chat room, we like to collect different editions of the books.
Yes, we do.
You heard Cliff. Did Cliff just say yes we do?
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's me. Yes, you just say
so two new editions. This goes along with the brand new Hobbit illustrated editions, a whopping 450-page illustrated version by J.R.R. Tolkien himself. Only sketches, watercolors, maps, drawings, and notes by Tolkien. That's available right now. That just came out. It's shipping right now. This is the new History of Middle Earth box set, which will be available for this holiday. And then there's a brand new Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien with, I believe, 75 brand new letters included in that.
I need to...
Cliff.
Here we go. I need to get...
what version of the book do you have?
Here's an example of the trade paperback. This is the Book of Lost Tales. Part Two. And the Book of Lost Tales Part Two was certainly preceded by the Book of Lost Tales Part One, which is over there on this
Oh, so it's
shelf.
a different
But
color scheme than what's in
this
this
is it.
hardcover.
Now, this is volume 2. Let's move onward down the road to volume 13. Excuse me, 12. Look, see, these editions of the History of Middle-earth had covers like this. They were monochromatic, single color,
That's
and they
what's
didn't
in this
have,
box set. It's a
yeah,
monochromatic
these.
typeset.
But no. It's just that these new editions,
Hey,
look at
Jason
the
Charles Mill in
difference.
chat room saying LOTR Cliff's version. Nice. Way to
Here's
keep on the
volume
Taylor's
9.
version.
Look at the difference. See? This is Sauron defeated, and this is the War of the Jewels. That's all. I mean, the content is still the same, but the artwork and the dust jacket completely different.
I
Do you
like
know?
pictures. Thank you very much.
Well, there you go. And this is just really what they were all like. All of these History of Middle Earth volumes all look like this. And now these new ones, well, who's the name of the artist who's supplying the new illustrations? Let's
I
remind
believe it's
everyone.
Alan Lee. But Cliff, hold those up again.
Sure.
Again, let's show them side by side. So you can see on the right there, that's why they have the same books but two different editions, because book nerds like Cliff love this callback to these old no picture typeset monochromatic colored covers, which sure, whatever, but I want the box set on the left with the beautiful pretty artwork. And I'm watching the chat here, and I think Anonymous Girl is with me in
Yes,
I need
indeed.
artwork.
It's the camera that's crooked. I know everyone's telling me that the movie poster behind me is crooked, but it's my camera. It's not the poster. It's just the way the angle of the camera looks. Trust me.
You would think
so
Cliff would have produced a movie and knows how to set up a shot. You would think.
you'd think. This is
so Cliff,
really exciting stuff. The History of the Middle Earth stuff is great.
So do you prefer, if you were going to buy a brand new hardcover slipcase edition of the History of Middle Earth, would you get the monochromatic ones that match your paperbacks there?
No, I've already got the hardcovers that match the paperbacks. I have mixed editions. I don't have a solid, complete editorial collection. I've got different editions. But then these books were released over years and years at a time, while Christopher Tolkien dutifully worked at home, working on his father's notes, and finally, getting these
So you haven't answered my question.
out.
What version of the books are you more interested in? The ones
I'm interested in the new. Oh, I'm really interested in the new covers. I'm really interested in the new boxed sets. They look beautiful. They look great.
But one of the box sets look like your paperbacks with no artwork, and the other box set has artwork. Which do you prefer?
Well, what was originally published is still intact on the inside. I think the only difference is the dust jackets. For example,
so which version of this box set do you like more?
Which version of the new box set? The one with the new beautiful covers. The one with the new dust jackets.
All right.
Yeah.
So you like the artwork.
But take a look at this. Look at Tolkien's artwork. You want to see what Professor Tolkien drew? Here's his original drawings for the Tower of Orthanc, in which the wizard Saruman would take his home after the Gondorians gave it to him. So you want to look, I mean, even if you get different dust jackets and new editions, they're still going to reproduce the entire manuscripts that Christopher Tolkien worked on, and they're going to reproduce original watercolors and pencils that Professor Tolkien drew. It's all part of the research that young Christopher did on his father's stuff. And all these different versions, like, there's really cool understanding of how Numenor was drowned, and early drafts of Sauron and Numenor being destroyed, and to see how everything changed to where it was published in the Silmarillion. It's a very interesting process to look inside the mind of the writer himself.
Speaking of other new interesting artwork and products, Cliff, I'm glad.
Oh yes, please.
Did you see the brand new artwork for the new expansion sets for Magic the Gathering?
Oh, yes, I did. The Hildebrandt brothers being reproduced and all these weird psychedelic cards they made. This is another secret layer drop where they're doing separate
This is
cards.
not Secret Lair. These are going to be in stores nationwide on
It's not a
November
secret layer
3rd.
drop?
These are
Really?
borderless poster art cards. Cliff, do any of these
Oh,
cards
whoa.
remind you of anything specific, or are they just kind of general artwork style of the 70s?
No, they're just going in for that really super psychedelic LSD experience. I mean, graphic artists and visual artists were tripping at the time. That's why
Look at
so
this
much
Tom
artwork at the
Bombadil
time.
card, though. Come on.
Isn't it amazing? Look at it. It's really amazing work. I think it's cool though.
I want Tom Bombadil as a black light poster. I wonder if the card itself will be a black light ink. I should have asked that. We have an interview with some of the art directors on the OneRing.net that you can read. We emailed back and forth a little bit last week because it was MagicCon. These
Yeah.
brand new cards are playable. You can see in the top right corner all the information is still there on how much the card costs,
Yes.
and what the card does is written
Yeah.
in handwritten text. Those aren't fonts.
Yeah,
Um,
look, the Watcher in the Water is a 9 strength, 9 defense creature. It's all right there.
what does that mean? I don't play. What does that mean, Cliff?
Well, that means it's got much more power than a lot of other little 1 strength or 2 strength creatures. It's a big, big boy. That's a big card. Really powerful.
What does it mean when Tom Bombadil is a legendary creature god bard?
Well, that's just a subtitle under his picture. When you're looking at a regular version of Tom Bombadil, that's what's printed right under his portrait. And it means if there are any other cards in the game that trigger off keywords or other effects, they would trigger off of those words. You'll know if you played, bro. I wish
Well,
I had
I
taught
don't
you. I wish I could
I
teach
don't
you.
play. And Kaylin
Well,
Griffin,
I would love to teach you.
I just want to remind you that loyal viewers of the show will remember that we've been reporting for 6 months now that there's a rumor that Tom Bombadil was seen on set. There was an actor or a character listed as Tom Bombadil on the set for
Oh,
season
yes.
two
Do
of.
you know how exciting that is? That is so exciting that there was a possibility of them doing Tom Bombadil cameo in season 2. I mean, it's great fan service. That's all it is, but it's really funny. Really funny.
So, do you want this Tom Bombadil in season two?
I don't know, but I sure would hope the rumor is true. I
Um,
do hope the rumor is true.
all right. So the details
Right.
are.
I will return in a moment.
Yeah, for sure. And the details are these are the brand new expansion packs for Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings. They come out November 3rd. I'm sure you can pre-order at your local store. These specific cards will be in collector boosters. Remember, when this came out, we introduced you to Jumpstart boosters and regular boosters and collector boosters. And so these are, ignore what Cliff said, these are not Secret Lair. These will be available in random packs of collector boosters, the borderless poster art cards. And then there's, I believe, 4 new scenes that are coming out. And I think Nerd of the Rings previewed on one of his videos on Friday a bunch of other new cards, but I'm just really excited about these. The artwork on these, I just want to collect these for the artwork. It's really cool, and I love Last March of the Ents. It's probably my favorite. There's something very graphic design ish that really strikes me, and then my second favorite is probably Tom Bombadil. So brand new cards. Other stuff that was announced for Hobbit Day, besides these books and these cards, the awesome audio soundscape by Jordan Rennells. You might have seen or heard his music because he composed a whole soundtrack to the audiobook of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And I believe he timed his music tracks exactly to Andy Serkis's read along. Remember, Andy Serkis did a read along, did an audiobook version of The Hobbit, and then he did Lord of the Rings. Well, you can get those on Amazon, of course you can. Jordan here created a soundscape so you could have like two tabs open where you're listening to Andy read the book and he scored to the time. Well, Jordan has gone back and he's timed exactly to match the official audiobooks of the Silmarillion. And I forget who reads it. Maybe it's lower down here. The Kickstarter just went live. He's already halfway to his goal. He needs 22,000 on his goal. He's 11,000. So in one short weekend, he's already halfway to his goal. Everybody that we've talked to absolutely loved his Lord of the Rings soundscapes. And he uses 3D spatial audio. So if you've got the cool Apple headbuds, you can do that. So he's already done Lord of the Rings, and now he wants to do the Silmarillion and the Hobbit. The Hobbit and the Silmarillion combined into one Kickstarter. So this is cool. You get 2 books, more than 30 hours of original score, sound effects, and ambience, timed exactly to the officially released audiobooks that you can get separately. And this guy's just really good at what he does. And you get all the files, and then you basically play the files at the same time that you listen to. Although that's weird because on iPhone, you can't play 2 audio sources at the same time. That's annoying. Because iPhones have the spatial audio when you got the AirPods. But if you can only play one audio file on one audio source at a time, then you can't listen. So I guess that you have to listen to this on your computer. Nerd of the Ring says, check out the stretch goals. He says, if I can bring more Middle Earth to your ears, I will. If he reaches 45,000 Canadian dollars, he'll do Baron and Luthien. Based on the official audiobook. 65,000, he'll do Fodel Gondolin. 80,000 Children of Heron. Wow. $120,000, and he will record ambience live in New Zealand. And I appreciate that lofty goal. And what a great idea.
It is wonderful. His music and soundscapes include, leaves and wind and thunderclaps and sound and music. It's so cool. It's really, really super cool. But in terms of playing it back from another source, yeah, I would use a combination of your computer and your phone so that you can listen to the spatial audio. So just like I'm doing right now. It's how I'm literally doing the show right now. I get to talk to all the people in the live chat on my phone while I'm running the show on camera with you.
And that's a different audio. An unexpected soundscape. Look it up. If you can't search for rings, I tried going to Kickstarter and search for ring or rings. Doesn't show up. Or Hobbit. So look up unexpected soundscape on Kickstarter, and I believe we have a link at theonering.net. Another reason to go to the main website.
He's here. He's here.
So
he's actually here with us in the live chat. Hello there. How are you, Jared? Welcome.
We were just talking about how awesome it is, and it goes along with all the audiobooks. So support that. Buy a new hardcovers of the books.
Definitely support him.
Pre-order your Magic cards. And Cliff, I saw our friend Nancy
posted
some photos of your Baggins birthday picnic in Griffith Park this week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yes, in a long expected soundscape, he says, I have a how to sync guide that will show you all how to make new files that combine the audiobook and the soundscape. Super easy. Thank you all so much. We thoroughly support you on this. It's going to be an awesome thing that you're doing on Kickstarter. And now back to the picnic. It was a great Renaissance fair. Even though it's not that time of year for a Renaissance fair, we had one. It's 20 degrees cooler. It's a much better time of year. And we're surrounded by such wonderful, creative people. I think my greatest pleasure was how many instruments were brought this time. There were so many great instruments. There was a mandolin. There was a mandolin and a lot of kids wearing Led Zeppelin shirts. And I realized that the day would not finish without somebody playing the Battle of Evermore. It was so great. There were a lot of instruments of cosplay. As you can see, we had some very creative, abstract Saurons. We had incredible Hobbit lads and lasses. We had a young elven prince. He was a Noldorin prince with a tiny little black and white kitten. And that little kitten ran over the whole picnic and just took over the whole place. There were many lawn games, like tossing the dwarf. There was musical Gandalf arrived with his guitar. He pulled out his acoustic guitar. The dwarf tossing was hilarious. But you know, it was most amazing to my mind, the satisfaction of how your hobbity appetite got fed all day. These people fed you. We had so much food overflowing in our picnic that we had to set up extra tables, extra tents, because there was table after table of pies, cakes, food, homemade casserole, mushrooms, scones, baked goods, cheese, meats, and delicious fried chicken and pizza slices and anything in between the world of edibles. It was the most massive. And I heard from our good friend Jean, who told me that people stayed late and were still bringing food late. There was so much going on. Unfortunately, I had to leave the event a little bit earlier than I normally would because I had to do and go officiate a wedding down in Huntington Beach, which was lovely. But our picnic this time, we didn't have Kieran Shaw. In the past, we've had famous moments, of course, where any number of Hobbit or Lord of the Rings actors come along and surprise the fans and visit. But we didn't have any celeb visitors, probably because the strike was still unknown and you didn't know how long it was going on. But it was really, really awesome to see that many people play trivia. I ran the trivia contest. It was really clever, really fun games, and we had such a fun time. Attendance was way up from last year. Just to say, we had every year we get a couple of hundred people, but we had a couple of hundred people more this year. We took over a big swath of the Shire, the most verdant, green, rolling Shire-like hills tucked away up in a secret crevice up in Griffith Park. Just so beautiful. It was perfect weather, idyllic location, and you couldn't ask for a better crowd of happy costumed Lord of the Rings fans. And so it was a ravishing success all around. Don't you think,
I'm
Myth?
so happy. Baggins' birthday bash is always a huge thing at every year. We've been doing it for 20 years with the One Ring. And sometimes we've had 800 people show up, and sometimes 8 people show up. And it doesn't matter because we always have a good time with you fans.
It's never been less than 50 people.
I have a feeling more and more people will be attending over the next 10 years because, again, this is the decade of Lord of the Rings. We've got Rings of Power. We've got new movies coming out starting next year. We got new video games coming out. There's so much new Lord of the Rings stuff. So we're really happy to see everybody.
We have video games, movies. We have
Jerry Vanderstell's brand new artwork.
Yeah. Oh, his artwork is stunning, by the way.
So this was just released for Hobbit Day. Cliff, you saw this in person at Comic-Con.
I did. I saw him show this at Comic-Con.
Like on this piece?
Breathtaking. I mean, to see someone bring a film image to a different level, because it looks like, he's just a master. He's a master at his craft. And to see him use these acrylics and paint strokes and to play with light he's taking his cue from the amazing compositions that were shot in the film. And that is, largely due to Andrew Lesney, the cinematographer, friend and Oscar winner to Peter Jackson. But these compositions, when they're made so vivid with paint on canvas, and it's just gorgeous. His ability at representational art is non-compare, really. He's one of the very best. And we should have invited him to the picnic. It would have been great to have him there as our guest. We really should have invited him.
Yeah, look,
he's so great.
If he's not following us by now, I don't know what to do. Like we posted everywhere about the picnic many times. So,
we did.
He's a fan like all of us. But yeah, we should make an extra effort. And by the way, happy birthday to Sauron himself, Sala Baker, who sometimes attends because it is his birthday on Bilbo's birthday. But instead, Sala was in Hawaii supporting the ravages of the the victims of the fire and helping to rebuild Hawaii and Maui. So happy birthday, Sala Baker, who has his biggest role since playing Sauron is coming out in just a few short weeks.
Are we allowed to talk about it yet?
He's on the poster, The Killer, from David Fincher.
Yes,
and this is
new David Fincher thriller. Yes,
and he's billed on the trailer. You can see Sala Baker's name. You saw Sala Baker in Deadpool. He was the older version of the Fireball Kid in Deadpool 2. He's been in Westworld. He's been in so many things, but now he's getting top billing in the poster and the trailer.
Billing with Oscar winner Michael Fassbender.
In David Fincher's brand new film.
Working with one of the greatest American directors, David Fincher. Like, whoa.
That's right.
I think it's awesome. It's really awesome. And I'm very proud of him working so hard. He's worked so hard over so many years to get his career where he wants it to be. And I'm very excited for Sala. I'm very excited for him. He's great.
And if any Rings of Power people are watching, I just want to remind everybody that when Lord of the Rings wrapped 20 years ago, several actors came to LA without a place to live, crashed on Cliff's couch, crashed on all of our couches, and until they got enough gigs to find a place and everything like that. If there are any Rings of Power actors that want to move to LA when SAG gets their new deal and want to join SAG,
you can offer my couch.
Our couches are open. They're still open.
Funny. You're so funny.
But moving on, we have a really important discussion to make, as if the writer's strike was an important discussion, but this kind of lit up the community for a long time, but this weekend really came into focus again. And this won't be the first, and it's definitely not going to be the last time we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and how it impacts Lord of the Rings. Now, first
do we have a more specific approach today? Tell everyone the news, because it's crazy.
Well,
it's driving me crazy, this news.
There's a few different things. So we'll start off with this, Cliff.
Yes.
It was announced today Amazon is using your conversations with this guy.
Are you holding that up? You are holding that up.
With your Alexa to train their AI algorithm that is going to be used across all their businesses, including in their studio's production, including reviewing, reading, and suggesting changes to scripts. They are using your conversations that you're not even having with the AI. Just anything that this speaker hears. You notice I have it unplugged for a reason. But everything that your Alexa speaker hears, even if it's not directed at the speaker, it's capturing and it's using your conversations to train their AI.
Is this an invasion of privacy or what?
You signed away your privacy when you boot up Alexa.
I don't have an Alexa. I don't use one. And my friends use their Alexa for one thing and one thing only: to turn the lights on and to turn the lights off in the room. That's all they use it for.
Well, unfortunately, Alexa hears everything else they do in their room. Even if that's all you use it for, the microphone is always listening.
This is deeply troubling, is it not? I mean, literally, folks, Big Brother is upon you. The George Orwell nightmare is upon you.
Jimmy Mack in the chat room says, Justin, you should talk about some things you're happy about sometime. I love this thing.
It's so awful.
I love this thing. Look, I use it, but I recognize a lot of people are wary about this stuff. And you know what? This AI conversation is something I like. And we're going to get into this debate in just a couple minutes because I'm on the opposite side of what a lot of other fans are. Because Cliff, what was the big news, the AI news that you shared with me?
Well, the big AI news today was that Professor Tolkien and all of his works are tagged on a list that a company is using. Another
this is from the Atlantic, author, a very, very respected magazine, long-time magazine, 100-year-old magazine with their own research and editorial board and budget. They've identified 183,000 books that have been scanned and ingested into all the AI algorithms, and Tolkien is on the list.
Is on the list. It was first pointed out to my attention by New York Times bestselling author Nova Ren Suma, and she said, I'm really not happy that 5 of my novels were used to train the robots. Did not consent. And she said, look at this link and see if any of your books were used without permission to train generative AI. And then our good friend Tim Bolton on Twitter in the UK, he says, actually, look, kids, Tolkien is also on this list. And by checking ISBN...
in a lot of ways. Like all of his books, Adventures of Tom Bombadil, The Book of Lost Tales.
There's the Spanish edition. Spanish edition of his books, the German editions of The Lord of the Rings, and Spanish editions of The Hobbit, and El Señor de los Anillos. And oh my gosh, so many different things, including the pocket paperback version of Rover Random. And hey, look, The Book of Lost Tales, Part 1, that I was just holding up and showing you guys.
And that up.
My comment to everyone is, whoa, why are they trying to train generative AI, except that they have an intention to pass off some other high fantasy, and they're going to try to sell it as a Tolkien-esque, Lord of the Rings-esque experience? And you know what that is going to be? It's just going to be a cheap knockoff from some generative AI crap, and they're going to try to sell it as if it's some brilliant, important, groundbreaking... I mean, they're going to sell all kinds of junk with this. They might make VR experiences or video games, straight up, console games. They might make TV shows.
Great.
They might make...
They already are. Anything. Cliff, question from the chat room. Does AI mean that we won't get lines like boats float because they look up and the sea is always right?
That makes one wonder. That really does make me wonder. But you guys, they're not going to recreate a J.R.R. Tolkien story and say this is a Tolkien story created by AI. What they're going to do is present some other garbage and say, here it is. This is your new high concept, high romance, high fantasy, elevated high fantasy. And it's going to be such a ripoff of the familiar that we already know is the superior work. That's my complaint. And the consumers are now getting much smarter about it now. Much smarter.
Well, Cliff, I have to push back here because the issue, the major criticism for season 1 of Rings of Power, 8 hours of content, was the writing was subpar. And as someone just texted on the hotline, and the number is on screen, does AI mean we won't get lines like boats float because they look up? I mean, that feels like an AI-generated concept, right? Like, you're telling me AI won't do better than that? I mean, if you're ingesting all of Tolkien's works, his lifetime, and his posthumous lifetime, I mean, he's published over 50 books since he died. He's published 12 books since the last Game of Thrones Fire and Ice book.
True.
So,
True.
I mean, dead Tolkien is more is more active than a living George R.R. Martin. So why shouldn't you train AI on the best that there is?
Because
there's no putting AI genie back in the bottle. That's what the point I'm getting at is AI is here to stay. Wouldn't you want to train it on the best fantasy author ever?
No. Why would you want to pass off a cheap secondhand effort and try to convince the audience that you're selling effort? Something else?
Where's the cheap secondhand effort? Is that Rings of Power?
Okay. No. Rings of Power was written by humans, and it has its own strengths and weaknesses that have nothing to do with this AI conversation so far as we know, because we really do not know to what degree any generative AI was used on season 1 or season 2, which you like to call season 1.5.
You're not curious what an AI Tolkien would write?
No, I am not here to buy what I call secondhand goods, okay? The reason why I call it cheap, why I call it knockoff, why I use disparaging phrases to describe what generative AI is doing, and I will not change my tune. And I know we can't put the genie back in the bottle, but I'm never going to have any other words for it except a very dim view of this. I have a very dim view of this, and I'm going to use derogatory critical comments because AI, generative AI, will never match human ingenuity. Even if you're interested in training the robots on the best of the best, it doesn't mean that we as consumers need to be satisfied with some AI knockoff instead of looking and praising and spending our money on to support, literally bringing our support to a human being. That's the kind of fandom we are. We're more interested in the human touch and the expression of human capacity, the expression of human grief, the expression of human faith. The power of the human spirit can never be touched upon and elucidated upon any better than a human being could. If you think generative AI is going to reach into the depths of the human soul and get you some powerful poetic expression that's going to help you understand life in a whole new way, it's not going to happen, and you're barking up the wrong tree of expectations. As I constantly tell my audience, and I've been doing this for years on theonering.net, we have to temper our expectations of what they're asking us to consume. And I mean, you could throw me into any VR room, I'll have a good time, and it's going to be fun, but I'm never going to come out of it and say, this has changed my life. I need to buy those books. I have touched the mirror of my human soul. No, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. The same books. We just spent a bunch of minutes on the show talking about these re-released hardcover books they're milking you not only once for another hardcover edition. There's 2 versions of the hardcover edition of a book that's sitting on your shelf right now. Don't you want something new? And there's a comment from Lincoln in the chat room. Cliff, so many authors have ripped off Tolkien. The Sword of Shannara comes to mind. I like it, but
Terry
it's
Brooks.
a knockoff.
I've interviewed Terry Brooks.
Will AI do better than that?
Yes, no, AI will not do better than that. Do you want, when I put my documentary together, Terry Brooks was one of the very first people I wanted to talk to. In addition to Terry Pratchett, God rest his soul, who wrote Good Omens and so many other wonderful books in the Discworld series. And, you know, I even interviewed Brian Sibley, the guy who just edited The Fall of Numenor for us fans. I interviewed Clive Barker, which was the most erudite, remarkable, intelligent human being that I've talked to about literary history and the thematic power of mythology than anybody I've ever interviewed in my life. I swear to you, he's amazing. But when I talked to Terry Brooks, it wasn't like, oh, hey, Terry Brooks, you just knocked off Tolkien all the time. No, my open-handed question to Terry Brooks was, how do you feel about the profound influence of Tolkien over all modern fantasy and speculative fiction? And boy, was that a rich, delightful discussion to have with Terry Brooks. And he's a great writer on his own, written other stuff that's interesting. By the way, side note, Richard Armitage, the actor, is a multi-hyphenate. He just published a huge crime thriller book that just came out today. And I'm going to ask the audience right now, do you want to buy a crime thriller that was generated by some AI, or would you like to buy the one that was written by Richard Armitage? See what I'm saying?
Do you see what I'm saying? I don't see what you're saying, because you just asked every major author in your documentary, Ringer's Lord of the Fans, how Tolkien's influence changed their worldview and it impacted their work. Why shouldn't Tolkien's work continue to influence the act of creation? Because creation now includes AI. Why shouldn't we all have access to
the act of creation using AI as a supportive tool? Is a very different modality than using generative AI as a completely self-sustaining monolith of creative source work. That's different. Can we clarify the conversation a bit? And I think, Justin, you're an intellectually honest person, and you've always been intellectually honest with me in these conversations. Let's really talk about the difference between AI, generative AI, being thrown into the consumer marketplace as a standalone, monolithic, whoa, look at this wonderful fantasy series that was created, versus
I don't think that's the best
using the tool for other writers, composers, fantasists, and other wordsmiths to augment their work versus to replace. That's the difference. Augment a human being's creativity and help it out with greasing the wheels a little bit and filling in the cracks? Or are you talking about replacing the person who was J.R.R. Tolkien? That's never going to happen. Never going to replace a legacy
no one's
of a brain.
It. And this is what
but AI can't generate languages and alphabets and the things that he did.
The Peter Jackson movies that some fans hate don't replace the books. The Hobbit movies that a lot more fans hate don't replace the books. Rings of Power, whatever you think of it, does not replace the books. Generative AI does not replace Tolkien. Doesn't replace anything that comes before. It's not trying to replace anything.
Oh no!
It's trying to generate.
They're scanning AI. Every single word, every use of syntax, every syllable.
Any good author is well read everything Tolkien, like every good author. All right. It's now AI is doing some of the thinking for us. Here's.
I love that somebody in the chat said it's baby Skynet. It's baby Skynet.
Well, and this is just part of the
Terminator level stuff.
Durin in the chat room says, Justin, there's a difference between buying copies of great works of art and humans writing code to try to produce another work by the artist. Here's the thing.
Great point.
I get what you're saying. There are a ton of influential copycats. Again, Tolkien is probably the most ripped off author in the history of fantasy. He is the godfather of fantasy, and
looking at you, Christopher Paolini and the Aragon books.
Every major fantasy author has ripped off Tolkien at some point, and some incredibly blatantly. I mean, and some very subtly.
Looking at you, Dragonlance, Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance Chronicles. Looking at you.
And we also interviewed the creator of Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Kevin Eastman said Ninja Turtles is based on Lord of the Rings. There's 4 hobbits. There's 4 turtles. There's Casey Jones. There's Aragorn. You have Splinter. You have Gandalf. Every most major fantasy storytelling of the last 100 years is influenced by Tolkien, and some of these authors totally stole Tolkien.
Yeah, some of them did. Even one guy who just had a lawsuit and got his lawsuit thrown out of court, and everybody laughed in his face.
But there's no debate that Tolkien has been ripped off. So why are you having issue with a computer inputting all of Tolkien's work, and now any layman, can use that?
The reason why is because I'm sitting in the position of understanding, and maybe it's a wrong assumption, but I'm sitting in the position that as that other author, that best-selling author said, I didn't give permission, and they're scanning my books and digesting my books for training the robots, and I don't want this. I did not consent. I've got a feeling in my bones that the Tolkien estate, which is there for the primary purpose of protecting his literary legacy, I guarantee you they did not give permission to the Atlantic.
That is a whole separate issue, and that's their own
why I'm
issue
philosophically
to deal.
against it.
That's
why I'm against it.
Okay, that's fair.
But you answered. That's my answer.
That's fair, but that does not answer why we shouldn't all have these tools. If everything's scraped anyway, if everything's been ingested into AI, whether we gave permission or not, it sucks.
Okay.
It sucks.
To what?
It's already done. It's already done. So now what do we do moving forward? This AI. Here's another thing that happened this weekend.
Okay,
Cliff,
what do we do moving forward? Do we as consumers have to be ignorant? No, we don't have to be ignorant.
Well, let me
we should
get
just
your
be informed and aware of what it's doing. Let me get your
opinion on this other AI issue that came up this week.
Okay,
Cliff.
Bring it.
All right.
Okay.
Folks, I saw a tweet. It always starts with a tweet. It says Tolkien
it usually
Gateway.
Does.
Tolkien Gateway, the one of the most thorough wikis on the entire universe of Arda and Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm. They're a pretty comprehensive wiki. Yes.
Was called out this weekend because they generated 45 AI-generated images to support 45 articles amongst tens of thousands of articles about Middle Earth. Tolkien Gateway generated 45 Mid-Journey images to put on pages that had no artwork, and they got called out on it, and they said, and they called on Twitter, and they said, "Hi there, we hear you loud and clear. We allowed a limited number of placeholder AI images to be uploaded as part of a pilot program to gather feedback. Only subjects that no person has ever illustrated were allowed. And once anyone illustrates that subject, the AI image is deleted." So, Cliff, the internet does what the internet does.
Okay.
And had a big fuming cancel culture thing. And Tolkien Gateway eventually relented, deleted the 45 images, and updated their AI art policy right here at the bottom of their main website right here. Priority and focus on art within the Tolkien Gateway should be given to talented artists within the community. Image uploads created solely by AI, such as Midjourney, DALL-E, and Stable Diffusion, are not accepted. So, Tolkien, in many eyes, they did the right thing. They did a beta test of So my question to you is,
I can think of a much easier way they could have avoided all these bad optics. I can think of such an easier way. They should have just solicited new fan artwork submissions from fans.
They don't have money.
All.
They don't have money. They're like Torn. They're not for profit. They don't have money.
Cliff, why don't you post on?
Why don't you? Can you get me 45 images tomorrow? No, you can't. You don't have any money. I don't have any money.
No.
Who's going to give us
put
images?
A post on. They put a post on their front page like we would. A call to arms.
But nobody's going to do it because there's.
How do you think we got Vote Bilbo going during the MTV Video Awards? Because we posted stories on our social media and on our front page.
But
if they just asked and said, "Hey, we're going to ask for a bunch of people to submit artwork."
But if I go back into the Torn archives and say, "Hey, we have 8,000 articles that don't have any images attached. I need to generate 8,000 images to accompany an article for 8,000 old articles," just like Tolkien Gateway kind of has.
Right.
No one's going to do that work, and they're definitely not going to do it for free. There are certain things that you can get the community excited for and participate in, but you're not going to go steal Magic the Gathering's artwork for all these things. So Tolkien Gateway identified 45 articles that had no accompanying image, and no artist was going to make those pictures without being paid, because every artist should get paid. So the Tolkien Gateway administrators said, "I can do this for free on AI," and they uploaded it. I don't see a problem with that, especially because AI has ingested the history of Tolkien artwork. You could literally say, "I need a picture of Tom Bombadil in the Hildebrandt style, something that's never been created before," and I can have it, and I can put it on the site. What's
They're
wrong
not
with
an
that?
they're not an economy-based website, and the Tolkien Gateway has never paid artists. In the way that Matt, Nerd of the Rings, will have a cooperative relationship with an artist and say, hey, let me help promote your work for free and promote more traffic to you and your art sales if you let me provide free use of your artwork with proper accreditation going back to
That's
loop
what
back
Tolkien Gateway
attention
does.
to you.
But if Matt
They
says I need a picture of if Matt says I need a picture of me every week, someone's going to say I need to get paid for this work. That's fair for the artist to say. And Matt's going to say,
sure.
I don't have the money.
Well,
So
no,
then
I mean,
the work doesn't get
Tolkien
done.
Gateway,
But
like Wikipedia, they offer up of commonly available things that are granted general use permission by the artist who created it. And if they had 45 missing articles with missing images, then they could have had a blank spot in the portrait that said, we need artwork. Would you like to submit?
They've had
Click here to find out how.
They've had that
and
for
then they
15
could just
years. They had that for 15 years. Exactly.
Well,
and they had that for 15 years and nobody drew it.
With the prevailing winds being what they are, and the winds are very strong. The winds against AI, the sentiment against AI being used in the Tolkien community is very, very strong for a reason. And as someone very intelligently pointed out in the chat, that, it's the emphasis on creating content with human creativity, heart, and soul versus creating artificial content by artificial means that has no depth or heart or soul. And that attitude, the prevailing winds are strong enough that the Tolkien Gateway folks did get the blowback that was expected, really.
Well, I don't agree with the blowback. And look, there's someone in the chat, Kathy, says, as a sketch artist, I am against AI. I appreciate that. And you know what? My degree is in art as well. Like, I'm fully aware of the value of art historically and the human input requirement that makes art art. Otherwise, it's not art, it's something else. So, but let me ask you this in the chat room, Taffy. Tolkien Gateway has identified 45 articles that need an image. Will you go draw that? Can you get that done? Can you please do that for the community for free?
Mm-hmm.
Who is anyone to ask anyone for free work on this level at this scale? Nobody should be asking for free and doing the work for free if someone wants to volunteer. But I don't see anybody. Yeah. I see all this ruckus about Tolkien Gateway, you're evil. Why did you use AI? But not one person raise their hand and say, hey, I will draw it. I will take the ring to Mordor. You don't see anybody raising their hand to do the work.
That's the solution.
But AI will do the work for free.
But that is the solution, is to solicit your volunteers who want to draw more attention to their own artwork and draw traffic to their own individual stuff, and to say, hey, we've got blanks, help us fill in the blanks. Anyways, but look, the training
Daniel
of AI
says, I'm in multiple Tolkien fan groups on Facebook, and it seems that AI artwork is taking over. I prefer artwork from artists, not a fan of this soulless AI thing. I agree, and many AI people constantly ask us to repost on Instagram, and we've had to block a few people from our Facebook group for posting daily AI. I don't agree.
Oh dear.
I don't agree with like clogging up your feed with AI content just to clog up your feed. But the Tolkien Gateway example is exactly the use case that AI should be used for good. There's 45 articles
you really think
that need images. Who is going to supply those images, Cliff?
Sorry, I lost you.
Who is going to supply those 45 images now? For free. Nobody. Nobody's going to. But AI has already done it. And so I disagree with the whole blowback that Tolkien Gateway got against AI. And I think there's a conversation to continue having. But AI is not totally evil. And there are use cases. I will not read an AI written book. If someone said the AI J.R.R. Tolkien, I will never read it. I will never buy it. I will never even download it for free because it's a waste of my hard drive space. But supporting a community thing like Tolkien Gateway with AI graphics on blank spaces. And they even said, if someone draws this for real, we will replace the AI image. So what is wrong with what Tolkien Gateway did? They literally said, as part of this beta, if someone draws it for real, we will remove the AI image and replace it with real artwork. They said that. Where did they go wrong?
I honestly think that the strongest gravity, the strongest gravitational pull that we have to J.R.R. Tolkien is that we recognize his organic and very human talent. And a lot of people recognize his talent as being divinely inspired. Okay? We're in a particular camp of intellectual fandom, and we also have a literary fandom with us as well that regards Professor Tolkien as one of the most remarkable examples of the depth and power of the human soul when the human soul puts itself on full display. And the power of his storytelling sticks with us and has remained powerful generation by generation because we do not smell the artificial anywhere near Tolkien. There's nothing cynical or artificial. There's no whiff of that. Not at all. Everything that he created, everything he worked so hard to do, the languages, the alphabets, the histories, the remarkable depth of the cosmos that he worked so hard for, is something that we as a fandom admire in its particular idiosyncratic way of being reflective of one of the most powerful minds that ever lived. We're not interested in powerful AI. We're interested in the mind of the human that has such depth and cognition and spiritual awareness and this depth of wisdom and the way the human soul works. That's why Professor Tolkien gets us to where he gets us as a fandom. And that's why we've stuck with him all this time. You are quite correct that there are useful tools and useful manners of applying AI. There might be a conversation we can have about the utility of AI versus looking at AI in a more aggrandized way as a source of creative interest. It will never be a source of creative interest, not for the reason that we as Ringer fans really stick with Tolkien and his efforts. His efforts are so labor intensive. Professor Tolkien's work is probably more labor intensive than Ursula K. Le Guin, as much as I love her work, as much as C.S. Lewis, as much as I love his work. Neil Gaiman, somewhere in this department of work-intensive fantasy world builders, there's a good comparison somewhere. But Tolkien is unique. And I mean, we are in danger, I think, Justin, a little bit of danger in confusing the issue between why we respect Tolkien's world and his works in such a way that we even form web-based communities that last for decades, all volunteers like us at theonering.net, just coming together to keep that legacy alive amongst us all. There's something about us as a fandom that we do. And I know I've been trying to articulate it for years, but I think it's now a lot more helpful having this conversation with you today and looking at why AI would have merit to be on the table in the conversation. And I'm baselining it for you right now that generative AI will never have the creative merit to be in the same playing field of J.R.R. Tolkien. It's just not going to happen. However, other supplemental uses and other interesting projects might come out of AI, having been trained on the best of the best, as you say. But you can't.
But that's my point. The Tolkien Gateway is using it exactly how you just described, which is not as a creative mechanism or something of import. It's literally just using to fill out the rough edges where there is nothing.
Sure.
That Tolkien Gateway is using AI to fill out the blank spaces at the edges of the legendarium. How is that wrong?
Well, as other people have explained, the Tolkien Gateway can do just fine having articles without illustrations at all. They've been doing fine without it all this time. And if they really want to fix the problem and say, let's have a pilot program to fill up all these blank articles with something more colorful and more illustrative, great. Then why don't they just do the simplest outreach to other artists who want to increase their profile?
Did. Okay, so they did. All right, so that answers your question. They did. They said, hey, there's AI images here, but as soon as someone creates something real, we'll replace it. They did it.
Yeah.
So what's the issue then?
The issue is they should have. The issue, I told you, they should have asked first, and they could have just said, let's be transparent. We've been asking for months now. People are not volunteering, and we want to build more relationships with artists. So we're going to, no, they did it all.
They did.
Justin, they did it in such a way to ask forgiveness later instead of asking permission first. That's how they did it.
So your issue, so the core issue is there's room for AI, but we have to be upfront about it. Don't try to pull anyone over on it.
Look at this from a bigger perspective. What if we were a different author fandom? Let's say William Gibson. How about, hardcore sci-fi neuromancer? Let's just say that we were all different. And we had a William Gibson gateway. And it was all the wiki articles about his characters and his stories. And you know what? Using generative AI for a bunch of really far out there sci-fi stuff would be a hell of a lot more appropriate than the rustic, earthbound Tolkien world that we're in as a fandom. And the generative AI concept is not something that we're going to take a shine to when, generally speaking, all of us would rather celebrate a talented Tolkien artist who wants to illustrate some wonderful place in the legendarium or a person in the legendarium. And we would rather celebrate them and go visit their website and buy their prints and buy their stickers and support them. That's what we'd rather do.
Replace it. That's what I'm saying. We're not replacing that. Okay. We're not asking someone to don't support. I mean, Cliff, you remember this
if
trailer.
They had made that clear from the beginning. They did.
They did. It was on their website. We're part of this AI. We're doing an experiment. We have 45 articles that had no images. Look, here's a Wes Anderson trailer for Lord of the Rings. If Wes Anderson made Lord of the Rings, this is AI generated, and yes, that was Bill Murray as
Gandalf. I saw that. Or Radagast.
And is that Timothy Chalamet as Frodo? I'm cracking up right
now. That's too funny.
Yes, it's all funny. Fake. But this isn't for purchase or for consumption. This is just a creative outlet. AI is a tool. Like we've all had these discussions late at night at DragonCon, Cliff, with what's your dream casting for a comedy Lord of the Rings? We've all had these conversations. Well, somebody is using AI here to make visuals of conversations you and I have privately had amongst friends and fans at all of these conventions late into the night. So AI is a tool. I will never buy this movie. I will never support this movie. I don't want to see a screenplay written with AI for this movie, right? But that is a use of AI right
in
there.
The quaintest corner of Middle-earth, embark on an...
It's a use of AI, and every time you're using AI to do something, there's another artist you didn't hire and you didn't pay for to do the job. And weren't you just talking about
whoa, pause.
Artists wanting to do stuff?
I'm gonna push back on that because again,
I'm
never going to pay someone. I'm never going to pay an artist to make that fake movie trailer. I'm never going to pay an artist to make Tolkien Gateway thumbnails for 45 edge case articles that hardly get any traffic. I'm never going to ask someone to make 8,000 thumbnails for 8,000 old articles on Torn that don't have any images attached. I'm never going to do that. That's not work I'm taking away from anybody. It's never going to happen. So no artist is getting money stolen from them from AI, because this is money that just doesn't exist. And I don't... And I have an issue. I know what it's like to be an artist with their art stolen. I know what it's like. I have to take copyright notices on YouTube every other week because people steal our content and put ads on it and monetize it. So I know what it's like to have be an artist with stolen content, right?
Yeah.
But this is artwork that was never going to get paid for. The Tolkien Gateway is the best example, and the Wes Anderson trailer, which we just showed, is the second best example of stuff that was never get paid for. So that's not a valid argument. And I've yet to really hear an argument that says Tolkien Gateway should not do this, other than AI bad.
Okay, well, I've tried to clearly define why Tolkien fans feel the way they do about organic artwork versus artificial artwork. I've tried to define.
I get it,
I'm telling you,
I understand the value. That
I mean,
Tolkien fans place value on artwork, and I get it. But there's a certain amount of artwork that will just never be made, and it's not stolen from anybody.
This isn't Blade Runner fandom. This isn't William Gibson fandom. This is not the Matrix fandom, where such a website would very appropriately be applauded for using AI as part of its thematic, approach to everything it's doing. But that's not us. That's not our fandom. And we as Tolkien fans are really looking at the anti-industrial messaging that's in The Lord of the Rings, the anti-Saruman and his industry and his machines and metal and destruction of the earth and destruction of organic, green, natural living forms because of his wild ambition to push the war machines and the industrial aspect. I mean, everything that is in Tolkien is so anti-AI. It is the least bit surprising, really, that the Tolkien Gateway had this situation. I'm telling you, if we were...
The flaming eyeball is an AI. It has... It is just a brain in the sky.
If we were all Matrix trilogy fans, on a gateway... Okay, I'm done with that. I'm just letting you know I'm watching the chat. You're never gonna find an organic streak of appreciation in Tolkien fandom.
I'm not
AI.
asking for appreciation. I'm not asking people to go to these 45 articles that get almost zero traffic on Tolkien Gateway and say appreciate the artwork. No, it's just an added value. Cecilia in the chat room says, Justin, a fair use of AI is no longer possible. I agree. Fair use AI is no longer possible, but the tool is here. It exists. It's already scraped the entire history of images that are on the internet. Period. It's already there. It exists. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. So if someone goes to a Tolkien Gateway article, sees an AI image and says, hey, that looks too close to Hildebrandt, you know what? In 30 seconds, I can create a new AI image without a Hildebrandt likeness and then upload it. That's what AI is. It's just, you can just instantly create, and I agree it should not be monetized. I agree it should not be monetized because it is using stolen stuff. But that's the history of artwork. George R.R. Martin stole from Tolkien. Paolini stole from Tolkien. All the Maxes and the Tims and the Brookses stole from Tolkien, right?
Yes,
everyone stole.
That's all the Dragonlance, all the Sword of Shannara, everything. I get it.
The history of creation is stealing.
Okay,
great artists steal.
We should bring, there's a good friend of mine who works in generative AI. He's in the chat, in the YouTube chat right now. His name is also Justin Miller. Welcome to the show. And he's been sharing some very unique and very specific points of view about generative AI. We should actually pull him into the live show to actually discuss this on another day.
Well, this is an ongoing conversation.
When we have more time.
Right.
But
So
it's
my
really
thought,
interesting to me. I know your final thought is your final thought, but I have to stand on the basic structure of why Earthbound Tolkien fans feel much more rustic and earthbound than a lot of other Star Wars fans or Harry Potter fans. It's kind of different for us. We are earthbound type of fans, and that's the nature of Tolkien's work. We're not William Gibson fans who would just say, "Yay, put lots of generative AI on all of our websites." That's
don't put
part
lots
of the theme.
There's use cases for this. It's not a full.
Yes.
I'm not asking to replace all the great artwork from John Howe and Alan Lee and the Hildebrands and Vanderstelt. No one's talking about them.
Anonymous girl is very funny. She's like, mom and dad are fighting.
Look, all I'm saying, so again,
thank you, anonymous girl.
Back to the
That's
comment
cute.
earlier in the chat where someone said, talk about something you like. I like AI. I like what Tolkien Gateway did. I like that the AI has scraped all of Tolkien books, so the linguistic knowledge of Tolkien is in these AI profiles.
And the linguistic knowledge of Tolkien can now be passed off as a cheap consumer product. And I'm the first person in the room to say,
consumer products.
Buyer
Nobody's
beware.
making a consumer product.
But they will.
You're
what do you think they're trying for?
You're making a bogeyman.
Is this a straw man argument? Is it? No.
Yeah,
they're gonna
totally. No one's making
they are
it.
so
they're
so gonna take the AI that now that they've digested everything Tolkien wrote, and they're gonna try to push something off on us.
Straw man.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see if Amazon refuses to sign the WGA contract and then write all the scripts with AI. They don't need the writers anymore, technically.
Gasp.
Amazon has the most advanced AI large language model out there. And they have the history of Tolkien scooped in.
I tell you, this is going to be really interesting what happens with the behavior of Apple TV and Prime Video, with them probably being the last ones to sign new WGA writers agreement.
Scary. I am I am on board with it. It has its specific use case. It's not to replace. It's not to cheap out writers. It's not to take away work, and it's not here to take away money. AI is best used in places where there was no money anyway. That's my whole point.
That's fine. You know what? Well, yeah, with Tolkien Gateway, I approve of them saying, we'll take it all down now, and if somebody does something for us, then we'll put it up for them and credit them. And I appreciate that they did that. All I was going to say is,
I think they
could have been more open-handed about it.
I think there's an open conversation to have, and I don't like the idea of cancel culture, forcing them to take down all those images, and then nobody raising their hand to say, hey, I didn't like how you did that, so I will do the work. I will do the work for you.
In the coming days, many artists will probably come up and fill that vacuum. I'm sure that will happen. Because a lot of artists might smell an opportunity.
90% sure it won't. Those 45 articles will never have an article. All right, Cliff, well, we have so much more to go to. The final...
We do. We've got more news. Okay.
There's some Green Dragon gossip.
Ooh, okay.
I have Green Dragon gossip. I'm going to leave you with this, Cliff.
I'm here.
I'm just going to give you one little Green Dragon gossip for season 2 of Rings of Power.
Oh gosh.
And we'll talk about it more in depth next week.
You call it season 1.5, right?
Season 1 part 2. Season 1 part 2.
Oh,
I'm going to give you one word. Okay. Season 1 part 2. I'm going to give you one word, and we'll have a deeper discussion on the implications of this word for season 2. One word, Cliff. Season 1 part 2. The word, the research, your homework for the next week, so we can have a discussion about it next week.
Okay.
Is Green Dragon gossip. Stores.
Really? Stores?
And that's the show. Do your homework. Tell me what it means. Tell me what it means next week. Cliff, take us out.
That's wild. That means we're going to have some branching, interesting things happening in other seasons. Holy moly, ladies and gentlemen, he just left us with a Green Dragon gossip bomb. You know what? Let that little bomb sizzle and fizzle in your cocktail tonight. You guys have a good time. Take good care of one another. Please be gentle with one another. You must be kind to one another. And Justin, I thank you and acknowledge you for putting together a wonderful show, bringing the intellectual rigor that this show certainly requires. Gene, now's your chance. Run around here and say hi to everybody, because it's time to say goodnight. Gene's going to say goodnight with everybody. A little bit of Boston over here, a little bit of Boston here north of Harvard Yard. This is Gene, and she's going to help us say goodnight. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie. By the way, his Boston accent is not that bad.
What? Oh, that's funny. You guys are wonderful, and thank you for joining us at theonering.net. Again, you can follow us. I'm at QuickBeam2000 on Instagram and Twitter, and we're also at the One Ring Net without the dot on all social media. Please check out our Discord, and we will be here again on Torn Tuesday, 1 week from now at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Until then, we have to say good night and good luck, or better yet, buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Did you say stores?